Trump doesn't want Iran's oil, and the nuclear part is a distraction. He wants to make Iran irrelevant at one of the world's most important energy choke points. I just looked at 29 major strikes, ceasefire claims, and Hormuz announcements, and measured not just how Brent reacted, but how that reaction changed from one event to the next. What I found was a negative derivative. The market's sensitivity to rhetoric was progressively decaying. But whenever tankers were actually attacked, or physical oil flows were disrupted, that derivative flipped positive, and market sensitivity accelerated again. In other words, the market was learning to ignore words and react only when barrels stopped moving. So where does this leave us? It leaves Washington with a much more favorable escalation ladder, but only because it has built a shock absorber underneath the oil market. Strategic reserve releases, rising production from the United States, Canada, Brazil, and Guyana, rerouted cargoes, commercial inventories and weaker demand, especially China's temporary pullback, have absorbed the shock. It does, however, give China leverage simply through the option to return. At the same time, the US keeps assuring traders that lawful traffic through Hormuz will be protected and that allied barrels will continue to flow. That helps explain the declining market response. Every time Iran threatens the market, Washington answers with replacement barrels, alternative routes, and security guarantees. So traders increasingly discount the rhetoric because they expect the shock to be contained. That gives the US room to strike Iran's missiles, drones, and maritime infrastructure without automatically triggering the same global oil price spike. And that creates the asymmetry the US wants. Iran's own oil revenue can be restricted, while Saudi, Emirati, Qatari, and Iraqi oil continues to supply the market. If Iran only threatens Hormuz, its credibility decays. But if it actually attacks shipping, it invites more strikes, scares away buyers, and makes its own oil even harder to sell. But all of this hinges on there being enough real supply. If reserve backstops run thin and Chinese demand returns, the market could quickly stop discounting headlines and start pricing on actual crude shortage.